Hello everyone, and welcome to our Trends in TechCom, our annual event where we talk about predictions and trends and general thoughts on where the industry is going. Delighted to have you all here. We've got a huge group of people on this call, so we're pleased about that. And we will go ahead and get started. I've got a couple of housekeeping things and then we'll jump right in. First and most importantly, all of you are muted, except for the two of us that are presenting. So if you have questions, I would encourage you to put those in the questions area. You can also use the chat tab for sort of general chat, but we do pay a good bit of attention to the questions tab, so I would ask you to put any questions or comments that you want us to bring up on the webcast there. To answer the number one question that everybody always has on a presentation, yes, we are recording it. Attendees will not appear in the recording. It's just going to be the slides and the audio, and we'll have that available for you typically within a day or two after the actual event. We are going to have 3 trends apiece. We're going to have a little discussion, and by discussion I mean rampant argument. We'll ask you to jump in on the questions tab, and if you'd like to follow along on Twitter, the hashtag for this event is TechCom2013. With that, I want to introduce you to Bill Swallow, who's on the other end. Bill, are you there?
I am here. Thanks, Sarah.
Excellent. We have 2 people.
So hi. If you don't know who I am, I'm Bill Swallow. I've worked in TechCom since roughly 1995, and actually Sarah and I have known each other for about 15 years now as well. I bumped into her very early in my career, and I've had the pleasure of knowing her over these years. I've worked and consulted with a wide variety of different companies with varying TechCom needs, and as such worn many hats, from writer, help developer, all-around tech guy, manager, and so forth. Needless to say, I've been bending my brain in many different directions, and thank God it hasn't snapped yet. Currently, I'm working as a writing and content strategy consultant, working a lot with global language and also with getting everyone's ducks in a row with regard to publishing information. I have a strong interest in global TechCom and process improvement, and I like to make sure that the right info gets into the right hands at the right time in the right format. I'm located in New York, just north of Albany, and for those who don't know me, I'm also an avid home brewer, meaning make my own beer, and I have a newfound love for Taekwondo.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
I think that many of you, I probably know many of you that are on the line. I'd also like to point out that when Bill and I met, it was also early in my career. We were just realizing that it's been 15 years, and wow, that's a really long time. So I'm based here in North Carolina. We have a forecast for 2 to 4 inches of snow this afternoon, which means, you know, basically Armageddon as far as we're concerned, so that ought to be entertaining. I think I'll be working at home tomorrow just to avoid the general mess. On the bright side, usually when they predict 2 to 4 inches of snow, what we actually get is cold rain, so we ought to be okay. My particular interests are issues around content, publishing, and technology, and how those 3 things come together and, you know, probably form the foundation of a content strategy of some sort for TechCom and other kinds of technical content. With that, I asked back in November, what do you expect on Twitter? And I asked people to throw out some suggestions for what they see coming. And here's just a little sampling of some of the things that people came up with. I heard mobile, and I heard a lot about, you know, ubiquitous connectivity, although then what if the people aren't connected, and what do we do about that? Wikis and video and agile, big data, pattern recognition, and a few other things. So with that, I want to jump in and talk about the first trend that I see coming down the pipe for us. And this is something that I've been thinking about for a while. I'm actually doing a pretty detailed presentation about this at Intelligent Content in February, and I hope to see some of you there. The trend that I see is velocity. What I mean by velocity is that we are being asked to produce content faster and faster and faster. And because of that, we need processes that support us with greater velocity. So velocity in authoring, creating content faster, formatting content faster, publishing faster, delivering faster, and possibly most importantly, making updates faster. All of those things factor in, and the implications of this increase in velocity that we're required to have are profound across all sorts of places. It is no longer acceptable to have a 6-month delay before translated content is available, because those markets where you need localized content are not willing to wait. And if you don't deliver right away, somebody else will. So all of the different facets around speed and velocity in all these different places are pushing us towards more automation and a more sort of systemic or systematic look at our publishing systems. So I would definitely keep an eye on this as an issue, the speed of everything, and in particular the velocity. Okay.
I would agree there. I mean, it seems like it might be, it might not, but that's something that I've definitely seen, and you know, the trend is definitely accelerating. Go figure, with velocity. And you know, I think that, you know, in many ways, we're going to have to look toward not only internal but external wikis to start helping curate a lot of that content that a lot of people just kind of store in their heads, whether it be from the user communities or whether it be from you know, just internal people who don't have the time to write up a formal description or what have you about their specific impact to what they're doing on the job and how it might relate to somebody else. They could actually go into the wiki when they have time and toss in that information and allow others to massage it as well to get that up to speed. So I see that, and probably you know, looking more toward scheduled builds and live updating of content being critical as things move forward.
Yeah, and there are a couple of good comments coming in about this. Ray Gallen, you know, what about learning faster as an end user? And I think that's absolutely, you know, another case. They have to learn faster, therefore we have to support that. A comment here, and Bill, I'll ask you this question. We are constantly updating our online help systems. What is the typical turnaround time for other organizations for these updates? My answer would be it depends. Do you have a better one?
It depends, and really it comes down to release cycles. I know I've worked with several different companies that put out a ton of help files to support many different applications, and these would roll out anywhere between quarterly updates with software updates all the way down to weekly updates based on exactly how critical the information was. A lot of this was achieved through scheduling builds with the product builds themselves. This way everything was just kicked off at once, and you know, the content was really placed as a highest priority to get that information out first, and then backfeed into other channels and massage the content later as time permitted. But really it was critical to get these new features, these issues documented, workarounds, and so forth into the online help as soon as possible.
Yeah, and there's a comment here, you know, why wikis, why not communities? I don't know that we're excluding anything. We're just kind of using those as an example.
Yeah, I'm definitely not excluding one thing over the other.
Yeah. Okay, so Bill, you have a trend.
I do have a trend.
You do have a trend. You have several trends. So let's talk about your first one.
All right. Well, the first one I'm predicting here is that PDF is not going to go away anytime soon. It's a format that you know, it's kind of old, has an old school expectation, whether it's from internal people or you know, end users, that they just want manuals. Whether or not they read them is a completely other story. But especially when you look at you know, government agencies and so forth, they need their forms and documentation all online, and a lot of that has been traditionally done long form and needs to be published as a printable document for regulatory purposes. They're all very quick to deliver. Anyone can print them out wherever they need to. And they're also the primary deliverable if you're doing any kind of formal printing. So if you're going to press for an actual printed book or printed marketing sheet, whatever, PDF is going to be pretty much the way you would interact with a print vendor. This way you can ensure everything looks and functions the way you need it to before you hand it off to the printer. So I mean, really, it's it's kind of a kind of goes without saying, but I think PDF is going to be here to stay, at least for the foreseeable future. So I would expect to continue to see those near daily Acrobat updates in your task tray.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I sort of agree, but I sort of don't. And I have some trends that actually point to a less of a focus on PDF. So I think as we get into some of these others, we may see some additional changes there. But you have a lot of comments from the audience, so let's take a look here. You can read a PDF file on your iPad. That is true. Big advantage of PDFs that people can be exact about which page they're talking about. And then a question from Larry, and when Larry asks the question, it's going to be a hard one. So, Bill, do you foresee any competitors for PDF, a Google Docs-like open equivalent?
For 2013, I'm unsure. I'm unsure if anything will actually take enough traction, that is. I mean, Google Docs are becoming increasingly popular, especially among a lot of the smaller startups and more agile companies that are out there, because they don't need to invest in storage space on their own. They can go ahead and, with a minimal expense, create corporate accounts with Google and manage everything up there. Now, whether or not there'll be a print-ready format out there that people can actively use instead of PDF, I'm not sure if it's going to take a widespread foothold, at least in the next year or two.
Okay, so there's another comment here, and an apology for sending a comment which is completely unnecessary, saying that PDF preserve characters when they may be corrupted in HTML output, very important in scientific docs.
It is very important, but PDF characters can also be corrupted as well, particularly if the people creating it do not remember to embed and subset their fonts. So I've seen many come through where they just assume that someone has this fancy schmancy font, and Acrobat just won't display it on my system because I don't have it installed.
Yeah, I think I would argue that that is not a limitation of PDF or HTML. That is a problem. That is a process problem. There's something not right in the way it's set up. HTML should be able to display scientific characters. Page formatting is a different story. There are a couple of other comments here, but I'm going to let them go because they tie very nicely into the stuff I want to talk about. Sorry, guys. So we'll come back to that. Because my trend, which does tie into this, is, thank you for those of you reading ahead, is that mobile requirements will change TechCom, and that specifically, because of mobile requirements, we're going to have less PDF. Sorry, Bill.
No, no problem.
PDF is not an optimal format for delivering content on a tablet or on a phone. And as a result, I think that we're going to see less of it. It's not going away. It's just that we'll see less of it. And I also think that this, in the past 5 or 10 years or so, when we were evaluating systems for our customers, we almost always started with, okay, well, we need really good PDF that does this, that, and the other thing. It was always the first thing because it's the hardest thing to do. And there's been a shift in the last few years from our PDF must be just so to, well, yeah, we also need PDF, but we need this tablet stuff, and we need mobile, and we need this, and we need that. And we are concerned about our system requirements being too limited by our PDF requirements. So in other words, they're willing to compromise on PDF in order to accomplish other things when those are in conflict. So less PDF is one of my predictions, more HTML5, more apps, And then more integrated help and more strategic thinking. All of those things kind of tie into this question of how are we going to make content work on mobile devices. And wow, I mean, our audience today is, hello people. Let's see. So first of all, there's a question here. Somebody says, can everybody see the comments? You cannot see the comments. They're going into the questions tab. If you would like to leave a comment that everybody can see, that needs to go in the chat window. That would be sort of the general chat. Just a warning to you that I can't necessarily keep up with the chat. I'm trying to keep up with the questions, so it kind of depends on where you want to put them. So then there were questions like, do you think PDF will decline as more people use mobile devices with near constant internet access? And I would say, well, I do. Mark, hi Mark, PDF will continue to be in demand for a while, but we must switch priorities to PDF, or sorry, web first, PDF last, which is pretty much what I just said. Yeah, let's see, we put correct, this is a response to the issues around the scientific data. We don't want a micron to become a milli, and I'm on board with that. Interesting comment here from Ray, PDF will survive, but increasingly with non-Adobe tools.
I can definitely see that.
Interesting prediction. I'll leave that alone. Isn't the butterfly upside down? Thank you, Kai. No, the butterfly is hatching, and it is still wet, and it is hanging because of that. Let's see. Into Mark. In 20 years, TechCom has not adjusted to the web. Not sure how quickly it will adapt to mobile. Yeah. Oh, wow, look at all this. They just keep coming, and we're already behind schedule. All right. Is there a preference for EPUB or MOBI format mobile delivery? I would say none of the above. I would say HTML5.
Mm-hmm.
Mobile sites versus apps, any trends on this? You got anything on that?
Mobile sites versus apps.
Yeah, yeah. Doing versus doing apps.
From what I know from designers, the mobile sites, they're really limited by whether or not you have connectivity, versus an app will always, have some native component to the phone, or to the tablet. So, if you're looking for live content, the mobile app, the mobile site is the way to go. But if you really want to give people an uninterrupted experience, then you're probably looking at an app. It may have a mobile or a web-based component to the content, but it would still function when offline.
Yeah. So lots of other comments here, and if I'm not getting to you, I will try to come back to them later, but wow, they're just everywhere. Now, what I wanted to do at this point was ask about the future of PDF and let the audience jump in. So give me a second here. I'm going to bring up our poll. This is insanely non-scientific, but tell us what you think, and we will throw this up here when we get a, sort of a reasonable voting percentage, and we'll see what you guys, what do you guys think? I think that, essentially, Bill, you're more or less taking approximately the same position, and I'm taking the less position, but, I think we both have a reasonable amount of flexibility.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting data point here. HP, this is from one of our audience. HP shows that its net revenue from consumer printers fell 4% in fiscal 2011, which may indicate that demand for print and printable formats like PDF is declining. So that is a very interesting point, in fact. All right, I've got 80-ish% that have participated, so I'm going to close this and see what we come up with. And there you go. So pretty evenly divided, I would say.
Between less and the same.
Between less and the same, not so much on the more side. So that seems, that looks plausible to me. I could agree with that. And of course, as always, it depends on the industry that you're in and your particular requirements and and what you're doing. There's a comment here, we need PDF files since we're in the medical device industry. And, if the government regulatory agency tells you to do it a specific way, it's probably wise to do it that way and not ship them a really, really cool mobile app. That's probably not such a good idea. So, all right. Bill, I believe you have a trend. What is your
trend?
You have a trend. Oh, look, more mobile.
More mobile. Well, I mean, mobile is really becoming kind of the be-all, end-all with end-user computing. I mean, even in developing countries, mobile tends to be their primary computing platform rather than a desktop or what have you. And Cisco even predicted, and rightly so, that they predicted there will be, and of course they came back later and said there are more mobile devices than people on the planet. So, we do have this case where, I mean, whether it be a Kindle or a Nook, or it could be a smartphone or a tablet, that these things are increasingly becoming a part of everyone's day-to-day life is using some kind of mobile device. So now more than ever, we need to be able to start thinking about targeting need-to-know information and pare it down as much as possible to make sure that, one, it fits on a variety of different screens without a lot of, without a lot of hassle either on the writer side or the user side to be able to access and produce this information. And by no frills for online documents, I mean, no fluff in the content. I mean, it could be as dynamic as you need it to be, but really it needs to be as targeted and specific as possible, because no one is going to be scrolling on a mobile device when they can, they're used to a single screen display of whatever they're looking at. Soup to nuts documentation, I think it's still going to have a need, but for mobile delivery, it's really about the appropriateness of information at the time that people need to access it. And one thing that I see happening, I think it's a little too early to call it a trend, but I think it's a solid prediction for what's to come. Looking at technologies such as second screen for Blu-ray DVD, Blu-ray video, having this ability to tie a mobile device to another piece of hardware that is running something else, and give someone either a enhanced experience or a completely different experience with interacting with that particular machine. I mean, I think that's going to be increasingly what we're going to see, especially within for technicians, for mechanics, for medical staff, and so forth. Being able to tie this what they're doing outside of their primary computing app, which would be their mobile device, to their mobile device to aid them in real time. I see that as something that's going to need to see need over the years.
Okay, so the question then we have for the audience is, are you worried about mobile? Is this something that you're concerned about? So let's take a look and see what our people here think. Is this part of something that you're worried about, or is this something that you're just not dealing with? Let's see some other comments here. Web versus mobile. Sometimes the mobile app is better than the web version, and the example is Facebook or Hootsuite. The actual web version is not as good as the potentially more limited version.
That's very true.
Yeah, Julio points out that mobile infrastructure is an issue, speed and capacity. And then somebody named Kareen wants to know what format for mobile devices. And yes.
Exactly.
Good question. And there are a variety of options, and the correct option depends on what you're trying to do. Mark points out we have to deliver topics and not books, and that is, clearly the case. We can't do books. Let's see. Oh, here we go, Bill. How does your combined two devices square with integrating user assistance into the user interface in progressive disclosure?
That's an interesting question.
Thank you, Kai.
I'm not sure if I completely understand it, to be honest, but so integrating UA into the actual interface. I mean, it's something that we it's a trend that has been happening for quite a while, but this kind of goes beyond it as far as having the either the dual screen or the the mobile screen that you're using talking to an actual machine, whether it has an interface or an actual screen interface or not. It's all context sensitive at that point. So, really thinking about that task-driven or that experience-driven, not even task, but, what is this person doing? Is it part of their task? Is it something they shouldn't be doing at that point in time? And having those quick reflex alerts coming right to their mobile as they're going, is really critical. I'm not sure if I even answered the question, but
no, well, we took a shot at it. All right, let's see what everybody thinks here. Is mobile part of your content strategy? And the answer is, you can see that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, yes and not yet. In fact, not yet is the winner. But yes is not too far behind, and there's not so much no, and there's only a little bit of what content strategy. So that's actually higher than what I expected.
That's much higher than what I expected as well.
So that's interesting, and we will feel good about the fact that we decided to focus on mobile. We have looked at our slides. It's not that there's overlap. It's that we felt like this was an important trend, important enough that we're going to spend a lot of time on that trend. All right, Bill, what have you got next?
Let's talk a little bit about localization. I see it as a growing market and a growing need for a variety of reasons. Not so much as far as translating finished product. I mean that's been a trend that's been growing well over many years, if not decades. But an increased demand for source content translation, and by source content, I mean anything that's being developed to support either a centralized content management system, any kind of centralized content, any kind of shared specifications among developers in various countries, and any internal information created in a company or between two collaborating companies. And so these things all need to be translated accurately and completely in order to first have a correct and complete internal understanding before you even start to put this information together for an external audience. And of course, those external audiences may have completely different language needs than your internal audiences. So you have this kind of growing need to have a localization plan in place to be able to handle not only the internal stuff, but then be able to turn it around to to the external. So if your time to market on your external publications and your external deliveries is slow, and if you're going to have that same slow turnaround getting your internal stuff translated as well, you're going to have a huge backup down the way. So, we're really going to need to start looking at how can we expedite a lot of the localization that's happening and without sacrificing the quality of the information. Because if you can't get a clear and accurate translation in-house for your internal needs, you're certainly not going to be able to get the right information to the people who need it. So, your customers, your users, and so forth. So I see that as being an increased trend. It's something that I've certainly seen, in the localization industry, where a lot more internal information is requiring translation.
All right, so let's take a look at what our audience thinks about this. And while we do that, we can address some of the questions around, or some of the comments that are coming up. Now, the question I have here is, and it clearly only applies to people that actually translate, they're actually doing localization work. What is the delay that you currently have from the time that you ship English or whatever your source language is until you actually ship your targets? While you all are thinking about that or passing in your vote, let's see, we have some comments here. The obvious metaphor for translation is an eagle grabbing a fish. I'm not even going to touch that one.
I did not choose that image, just to be perfectly clear.
Yeah, that was all me, sorry. Okay, and an increased demand to translate fast. Do you agree with that? That's from Lori.
Absolutely. I mean, you have an increased time to market, but you also have an increased need to get the information internally translated, so that if you have various people in various countries working on the same product, same project, and they don't speak the same language, then the time to get that stuff translated is critical.
Mm-hmm. So a couple of other comments here, I think, related to this. There's one comment here that says localization is not a global issue but U.S. related, localization trend. I suspect what this means is that localization is a new topic only in the U.S. and is a sort of a done deal in other locales. Europe's been dealing with this for a long time.
I'd say both yes and no. I mean, yes, Europe has been dealing with localization, and they have very strict requirements from country to country that they need to have a targeted version of documentation for each of those countries. But honestly, the trend that the trend of faster is really a global issue, because people are consuming information faster, and they're interacting with technology faster, and technology is evolving faster. So there is an increased need to have everything localized as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's just the U.S. that's feeling this.
Yeah, I think his point is that it's not a new trend for Europe. It's a newer trend for those of us in the U.S. And I agree with that to a certain extent. It's something that I think certainly markets in Europe have been dealing with longer, or more integrated into their process. All right, let's see what we've got here.
Mm-hmm.
So the result here in terms of questions, 32% are reporting SimShip. That is really, really high. That is a big number.
That's huge.
Yeah, I don't know what it is across the sort of teccom industry in general, but I'd be astonished if it was more than about 10 or 15%. So our audience is apparently awesome. Less than 3 months is really not bad either. Now those other two, 3 to 6 months, more than 6 months is probably not where you want to be as an organization, because of the obvious delays, right? Okay.
There's an interesting comment here that says that we SimShip, but we also have a delay on approvals for at least 6 months. So does that mean? I would assume that means that the entire package sits until everything's done and then it goes out the door.
I think what she's saying is that they finish everything and then it goes to the regulatory agencies, and it takes 6 months for them to come back. Which
very true.
It's not that hard to SimShip because you finish.
You're waiting anyway.
Yeah, you're waiting anyway. So let's see here. Continuous delivery model makes it easier to SimShip. That is true. What else do we have here? Are there any requirements or standards for documentation in European Union countries? Yes, there are. Mm-hmm. That is a whole other presentation, but the short answer is that yes, there are. SimShip is easy with only one language. Okay, that's true. Okay, Bill, do you believe that many companies will sacrifice translation quality for velocity, settling for good enough machine-translated content?
I think the trend, well, there is definitely a trend there, and the trend is that companies have done that, and they're learning from that mistake. I've seen many companies move forward initially with going with machine-translated content because, one, it's cheaper, and two, it's faster. Now, cheaper and faster, if you draw that little quality triangle, if you go cheaper and faster, you're obviously leaving out a quality aspect. That's not necessarily always going to be the case with machine translation. There are workflows that will allow you to do a quality job in a reasonable amount of time, but your costs will be higher. Regardless, though, I've seen companies go the machine translation route, be severely disappointed, whether it's in the quality that they're seeing, or worse, the quality that their customers are seeing and responding to. and they're then coming back and saying, okay, we tried this machine translation route, it's not working, let's go back to using real certified translators to get this work done the right way.
So I would add to that a couple of things. One is that we're seeing a lot of machine translation being done for what I would describe as informal content. So for example, developer forums, where if my choice as a Russian developer is to see the English version or a machine translated Russian version labeled as, well, we machine translated this because we don't have a Russian translation and we're going to show that to you along with the original English, you get something sort of good enough to at least help you read through this thing. So I see a lot of this in forums, developer areas. There's one company in particular that I would use as an example of this, ironically, which is Microsoft. If you look at what they've done with the Microsoft Developers Network, with MSDN, they've done some really good work there in providing language support via machine translation for stuff that is not going to go through a formal localization process. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is that I think it is possible to integrate machine translation and localization management, matching, those kinds of things, along with professional translation. And I think that over time we're going to see more and more of that. We're going to see people looking at, we can machine translate some stuff, we're going to not machine translate these things. And actually there's a comment exactly to that effect here.
Yep.
Machine translation, and then people can do a much faster edit, and is the best hybrid model. So
it's a good hybrid model. It's something that's not been, I guess, finely tuned yet, because you have an issue where you still need to retrain the machine translation aspect based on the edits that the humans make, and you need to make sure that this also gets reflected back into translation memory so that the machine the machine doesn't make the same mistake twice. And whether the machine is smart enough to look and say, oh, this is a match, is a completely different story. So there's still some training that needs to go on, both with training the machine and training people on how to actually work in that style of workflow.
Another comment here. European Parliament uses machine translation for internal communications, and that's another good example where it'll be good enough. It's not going to be great, but it's perhaps good enough for internal, informal kinds of stuff. I know that I personally use occasionally get email in languages that I don't understand so well, and I will happily use machine translation to figure out what's going on there.
Exactly.
All right. So the last trend that we have here is generally rethinking content delivery. So the trend that I see here is that we as an industry are really thinking hard about what are our delivery requirements? What did they used to be, and what are they now, and how can we rethink this? So again, less PDF. Faster delivery, more languages, more devices, and more formats. Now, what I'm seeing in our consulting practice is an evolution away from static content that is delivered, for example, as a PDF, but it could also be static in HTML, and a move towards delivering content that is much more flexible, much more reusable, and can be repurposed in interesting ways. So what we're talking about here is scenarios where instead of producing a flat PDF-based set of 100 data sheets for your 100 different products, you produce a web-based interface that lets the end user choose a couple of different settings and then only see the 4 products that meet those requirements. So you have sort of, it's sometimes called parametric search, but you have a faceted search sitting in front of this thing so that you can say, well, I need a widget that has these kinds of features, and then you see the resulting product options and their data sheets instead of, here are 100 data sheets, you figure it out. So move away from content as a flat sort of deliverable on paper or on PDF, and towards intelligent content, content that you can do things with, delivering the right content to people. And somebody earlier mentioned delivering stuff in the appropriate language based on a person's location. Now that's actually problematic, but based on a person's preference. If I've said that my preference is for English, but I will also accept German because I do understand that, and if you throw Italian at me, I'm in trouble, but I might be able to make it work, then the system is smart enough to give me content in that order based on what's available. So, but we're moving away from big, huge lumps of content that you throw over the transom and that are managed as lumps, and instead towards this idea that content is also data, or is also information. And I'm certainly not the first person to talk about this. There are a couple of examples of this here, and several people are saying, for example, Mark Baker has talked about addressable and mutable content. Patty's saying we need to think of content as a service instead of a product, which is an interesting way of looking at it. And Mark, again, the move from linear content to hypertext. All of those pieces kind of tie into this idea of content as being not a PDF, but in fact something else. Not a page, not being page-based, but being based on these relationships that you have. We're seeing a lot of stuff around, animations that are interactive where you can click on parts and then it takes you to that particular piece of the content, or it gives you a little instructional module about that specific part of the product that you're looking at. Lots and lots of stuff in that area.
Yep. And I would say also tying this in back to velocity. I mean, we not only have the velocity or the speed at which to publish content, but we also have the speed at which technology is changing. It's rapidly increasing. I mean, you look back, we've had print for as long as modern civilization has existed. But, I mean, then you look at PDF and Help, they've been staples for the past several decades. Web's been big in the past 15 to 20 years. But most people now associate web as a social medium rather than just an electronically published medium. And that's not even a 10-year-old phenomenon. And then you look at ebooks, and, I mean, it has a 40-year history of digitizing books and putting them where people can access them via machine. But most people, again, associate that with a 5-year-old technology such as Kindle. So, and these are all becoming very commonplace things that, everyday things that we take for granted. And tech is just changing faster than ever before, and we need to be ready to adapt quickly, and have not only be able to publish content quickly for a new medium, but also be agile enough to take what we already have developed and move it to address a new documentation need, whether it's 3 years out or 3 months out. Looking back, I mean, 50 years ago, everyone was glued to their TV screens watching Star Trek, going, "I can't believe all these devices that they have, that they've dreamed up about using." And now we hold ones in our hand that are more powerful than what that we even considered 50 years ago. So, we need to not only think about what our immediate needs are and about where things might be going in the next year or two, but we need to start really thinking about if we do need to jump from one source content format to another. Are we prepared to do that? Is this something that we can easily transform and then move forward with, or is this something that we're actually going to have to spend a lot of time and a lot of brute force to get done?
So I have a poll that goes with this. It is perhaps so vague as to be not very helpful, but the question I want to ask here is, will your content delivery change? You can take that any way you want to. Meanwhile, we've got some comments here. Augmented reality. What about augmented reality as part of intelligent content? I don't see why not. It's not for everyone, but that could be out there. Somebody else said envision documentation on demand based on a user's setup or on a user's permissions. You haven't done that training yet, so you don't see that part of the interface. You're not allowed in there. A couple of others that I want a tricorder, okay. And there are a couple of others here that are really other trends that people are asking about. I'm gonna jump into those because we do have, that's actually our next little section, is what other things do you think are coming that we have not covered. So I'm not ignoring you, it's just out there. So let's take a look here. Looks like we're up to 75% voted, so I will close this poll and let's see what we've got. And there you go. That's a big number. Or maybe
that's a very big number.
No, that's a small number.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Will your content delivery change? Absolutely. And maybe, that's a good guess. And with no, it could be that it's just within the foreseeable future, or it could be that, I'm not sure exactly, if saying no means that it's just not going to change in the foreseeable future, or within the next year or two. But I would say that there's definitely going to be something on the horizon. I guess so. It just depends as fast as your company infrastructure needs to evolve.
So let's take a look here. So the question then was, what else do you see that's coming? And I've got several comments already about this. People saying, well, what about this, and what about this trend, and what about this one? So let me throw some of those out there that people are interested in. I have a comment from Jacques saying, is trend 5 no text? Less, I think he means less text, more visual, probably. Or actually, he might have been commenting on my slide, which had no text on it. I would also say that less text is probably a trend because, again, with localization, in general, sort of technical visuals are easier to translate than other kinds of things.
Very true, but at the same time, it's very hard to index down a bit of video, or unless you have incredibly tiny snippets of video, it's very hard to get to those for lack of a better term, those context-sensitive bits of information that people need.
Yeah. All right. Larry says 40-plus minutes in, and at this point I think more like 48, and I have yet to hear the word curation. Is that so last year, or have we mastered it to the point where it is no longer a trend? Well, certainly part of that is that we have a general policy of trying not to repeat our trends, which we broke in a big way with mobile, which was on our list last year. Bill, what do you think about curation?
I think it's just going to be an ever-growing, not ever-growing, but just a consistent need. How do we find and categorize and label and store, distribute, all this information? I mean, it's just a part of what we need to do to deliver content to our audiences. I don't foresee it going away, and I certainly, believe it's in stronger demand than people think it is. And a lot of people, don't even realize that, we need to be mindful about how we're curating and how we're actually, storing and accessing our content.
So there are two, I don't know about opposing comments, but two sort of contrasting comments here. One is from Andrea, who says, a colleague of mine, I have this friend, she says, a colleague of mine believes strongly that visual display is part of the content, that is, proximity of elements conveys information. Do we lose this form of communication as we move away from paper and PDF to mobile content delivery? As a counterpoint to that, despite the fact that he hadn't seen this comment, Mark says, the change has to involve authors giving up the idea that they are in charge of reading order. Mm-hmm. And I think, those two things, so first of all, not paper and not PDF does not eliminate proximity of elements, right? It just changes it. You might have more of a scrolling environment, but certainly if you put things that are closely related together in an HTML file, presumably they'll be displayed closely together.
Right. You still have context to consider.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you don't give up context, it's just maybe different and more limited. I mean, I think it's certainly true that you don't have 300 pages all together, and I think there were a couple of other comments sort of like this. again, Mark, key is to enable the user to choose their own path through the content. Other trends, increased velocity will force delivery changes. I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, here's a question, Bill, for you. Content searching, multiple formats, locations, etc., seems to be becoming more important within organizations than content delivery, PDF, HTML, mobile, etc. What do you think?
I think that's absolutely true. We've even seen that back when Google first started putting their search engines or making their search engines accessible and purchasable by companies, to just toss into their tech stack. And content searching is definitely going to be an increased need or an increased focus for a lot of people. But exactly how that happens and exactly how accurate the returns are, they're going to change with how people interact with the technology that they're using in the first place. Up until, I would say, the last couple of years, the biggest means of indexing and such was using, meta tags and so forth in your, for lack of a better term, in your HTML. But now we're seeing that Google is even starting to abandon that approach and starting to look at the social aspects of information online and being able to pull in not only keywords but also the appropriateness and how much people are talking about it. So you have all that to consider. So search, yes, it's going to be more important and it's going to be something that's increasingly going to be important, but how you go about it is going to continually change.
Okay. Other comments. Another possible trend from Robert. Adobe and Madcap lose prominence as authoring tools. Would you like to comment on that? Because I would not.
No, I don't think so.
Interesting point. If there is evidence of that, I'm interested. I will just say that I don't know that I'm seeing that as a trend. It's always a possibility.
No, they still have some hefty user bases and so forth, so I don't see it as a trend.
Possible trend from Selena. Text-to-speech with vocal commands for people when their hands are busy performing a procedure.
Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yep.
I'm not sure
when my kids,
it's a cool new thing.
It's a cool new thing. I would say it's a trend with probably the younger generation. I know when my kids fire up the Xbox now that we have the Kinect, they hardly ever use controllers. They just sit there and talk to the Xbox and tell it what they want it to do. It's their preferred means of interacting with it now.
Let's see. Question from Ethan. Is touch having an impact on content presentation and use versus content designed to be consumed with a mouse and keyboard? I have an opinion on this, but Bill, what do you think?
Well, I actually don't have an opinion on this, so why don't you go right ahead?
Yeah. Well, my opinion is that it should have an impact on content presentation, but we're seeing very little of this at this point. We're seeing a lot of stuff being repurposed into mobile in suboptimal ways because we're new at it. Let's see, more comments about curation. Faceted search, intelligent delivery is automated curation. We should facilitate curation, not perform it. Those kind of go together. Biggest trend, says Julio, is more attention to short attention span. Less information that's divorced from the product. That's interesting. Let's see. Testing with users is an umbrella phrase for checking whatever options you need. You should not judge or act based on what you think, but test your options with real users. I agree, but I'm afraid I don't see that happening as much as it should. Let's see. Do you expect companies to leverage user-generated content as a way to avoid paying professional writers? What do you think, Bill?
I really don't see that. With everything, there's going to be something new. Someone's going to have a brilliant idea of being able to, lower their overhead to do these great things, and they're going to find that it's going to fall on their face because you still need, a trained professional, in place to make sure that things happen. Now, does that mean that companies are not going to use user-generated content? No, I think they will, but I still think you're going to need that trained eye, that trained person to do something meaningful with that information. You know, a mob mentality is not conducive to doing something well.
Let's see. Will the need for making content accessible, for example, for someone with a visual impairment, be treated just like the need for localization? What do you think?
Yes and no. And I think, I mean, honestly, I think Shar James Tanny would be a better person to answer this question. But, you know, these are all needs that you need to consider. You know, not only the target language, but, you know, are you catering to, you know, people with visual impairments? Are you catering to people with physical handicaps that need to interact with content and with, you know, technology differently? You know, these are all things that you should be doing as part of your audience analysis and as part of your market analysis before even moving forward with the strategy.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I do see more attention being paid to accessibility, and as I'm sorry, I lost the commenter's name, but you know, when you plan for it ahead of time, it's easier than it is to bake it in after the fact. Okay, other trends. Artificial intelligence where the device learns how the user uses it. That's from Bobby. Mm-hmm. Jennifer has increasing importance of terminology standardization and management. I wouldn't disagree with that.
Absolutely.
Regarding Adobe Madcap, many of us, this is Andrea, many of us still need to provide paper instructions to put in a box. We need desktop publishing for the foreseeable future. That would be the counterpoint to, is this going away? Mm-hmm. Let's see. Weinberger points out, this is Mark, that the web gives people access to people with experience and people with credentials. Content quality is not the issue, but specific experience that people trust. There's some stuff there. All right. Hiring trends in the U.S. Does anybody, I don't have any insight on what's happening in the U.S. in terms of hiring. Do you?
No, I don't have any specific data to speak to, unfortunately.
I get some stuff from, in my case, the North Carolina Technology Association every month that shows hiring trends in our state, but I don't have anything that's U.S.-wide that's at all useful. Claude, do you see more animations and videos than text in the future to explain technical processes? I think there will be more. I don't think it will be more than text. I think it will be more than there is currently. Bill, do you have anything on that?
No, I would agree with that, and we're already seeing it now with walkthroughs and so forth, specifically for mobile applications, where it's much easier to show people exactly how the flow of using the app will work, and they can actually do that within the app itself. So, you know, we're seeing this as another form of embedded assistance.
Huh. Okay, so there are a couple of other things here. An interesting comment that a certain very large technology company is hiring almost all of its writers in China. So I know what the technology company is because I know who left the comment, but we'll just leave it at that. Thank you for that interesting feedback. All right, I have a couple of questions here that I've deferred because they were more big picture questions. And we have a few minutes. We will try to address questions. It may take us another 5 minutes or so. If you need to run, that is not you, Bill, but people in general, obviously feel free. I will put up our, let's see, the webcast will be there in a day or two. We've got some other upcoming events, which should be fun. And I'll leave the contact information up there while we deal with these last few bits. I do want to thank everybody for coming. I've got about 5 or 6 questions, it looks like, that we want to tackle, so it'll probably take us another 5 minutes or so. All right, so Bill, the question on the table is, what software is available to speed up automation, and would a content management system do the job?
Well, content management system will certainly do the job of managing your content, but depending on exactly what you need to do with the content will depend, obviously, on the technology that you need to, use. For example, do you need to tie into an automated build system? Do you need to run tandem with a development build system or be able to tie directly into theirs? What are you publishing out to? And are you publishing out to a live, web-based repository at all? So, yes, and no. CMS is not going to answer all of your problems, and certainly I can't even say that generally a CMS will answer all your problems, because with the many that are out there, they all perform they all perform a different task, or they're all suited for various needs. Otherwise we would only have one CMS. There would only be a need for one CMS. So it really does come down to exactly what you need to do with your content.
Yeah, I would only add to that it is very tempting to focus on the technology. What can a CMS do for me? Does Adobe or Madcap or whoever meet my needs? That type of thing. But nearly always these are process problems and not technology problems. You have to fix the process and the business before you can make anything work at all, including a CMS. So the temptation is to say, oh, if we buy this, it will fix all our problems. But you have to look at the question of how are what are your business processes and what is broken in the business process before you address the question of what CMS should. The number one question I get from people, the number two question. The first question is, is this being recorded? The second question is, what should I buy? What software should I buy? And that is an unanswerable question, given not any good, information. To deliver a paper 8.5 by 11 3-column kind of thing on a tablet, you might want to think a little bit about delivering something that visually works better on a tablet. PDFs are also quite large, and you've got limited storage on your tablet, so that can be an issue. We usually push towards using HTML as the core technology for tablet-based content in general. Let's see, Bill, do you see these processes, and I believe this goes back to well, I'm not sure where. This was at about 11:30. So do you see these processes as facilitated by Agile development?
These processes.
Yeah, well, sorry.
Let's go back. It's been a little while. We've talked about a variety of things.
And, quick translation, he says. This is from Ray.
Quick translation and Agile? Well, yes and no. I mean, I think that, there's definitely, Agile really depends on getting everything for one component done in a specific time frame. It's not so much, that it's going to, Agile doesn't lend itself to quick translation. It just ensures that everything is complete for one component of what you're working on. So, as with Agile, you have one deliverable, you have one task. That's broken up into many different people collaborating to make sure that that thing gets done, and there will be a localization component to that. But I don't think that, Agile or not, I don't think it's going to, speed up specifically the localization process. You still need to employ other tactics based on exactly, one, what your turnaround is for the sprint, two, exactly how you're going to go about translating. Are you going to use machine? Is it better suited for Agile? I'm not sure. Exactly how are you delivering this content? How important is the content? Do you have a need to get specific information out to a specific audience that perhaps a machine is not trained to handle at this point? So yes and no. It could positively or negatively impact the quality of your translation, depending on how you choose to build translation into your Agile workflow. How's that? I'm on board with that. I would just add to that that it is almost impossible to support Agile without doing modular content, and topic-based modular content is easier to do in incremental localization. So, very true. Actually, that comes back to Ray just posted an update here that you don't have to wait until it's all done, and that's true. And that's, Agile isn't the single solution to increasing your localization turnaround. I mean, if you plan for localization well, you can do that incremental translation as you go. You can even start the translation process at day one in your project if you align your project, to cater to that.
Yeah, so I will give the last word to Nancy, who wanted to know back at 11:15, can you give an example of a user doc type mobile app? And my short answer is I've seen a bunch of them, but they're not public.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything in that direction? I've been racking my brain trying to come up with something that's helpful.
No, not that's universally accessible.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of this going on, but they're all hidden away and not not necessarily publicly available. There is an app somewhere. I don't remember exactly. I better pull it up. There is a support app for Minecraft, believe it or not, and it is called something like Minecraft Documentation, but that's not what it's, or Minecraft Support or Minecraft Cheats, and it has a good bit of content in it that's all about how to do things in Minecraft, so maybe that's a reasonable example. I don't recall it being compellingly wonderful, but that's at least one, not the best example ever. Okay, and with that, I think we are wrapped up. Thank you for hanging on with us. And Bill, did you have any final words of wisdom?
No, I think I'm all wisdomed out.
All right, well, thank you all for coming, and hopefully we will see you on another one soon coming down the pipe. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye now.
Great, thank you.